Hello, everybody. This is Roger Durling, Executive Director of the Santa Barbara International Film Festival, and I'm here with Fernando Frías de la Parra and his film, I'm No Longer Here. I'm No Longer Here is Mexico's entry for the Academy Awards and is shortlisted, yes, for Best International Feature Film. It is nominated for Best Ibero-American Film at the Goya Awards. And we have to wrap up today right at 11:40 because Mr. Fernando has to go to the Goya Awards. It's also nominated for Best International Film in the Satellite Awards, and it's the winner of 10 Ariel Awards, which is Mexico's equivalent of the Oscars. It won Best Picture, Best Direction, art direction, editing, cinematography, costume design, makeup, screenplay, breakthrough actor, and sound. Welcome, Fernando. I'm so honored to have you here. I've loved your film so much. And I want to start talking about the visual, which is just phenomenal. I want to ask you about the fact that you moved away from the gritty look and handheld camera. Instead, your approach is very classical. And can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to Santa Barbara International Film Festival. And thank you to everyone who's here. It's a pleasure. Thank you for such nice introduction. Yes, there's something to say about the visual approach. I have to be very honest, and I consider myself like someone who reacts to things from a very visual point of view. It's the visuals always. And sometimes like in life, sometimes you like something without really knowing what it is or something, and then eventually you know more about that thing and it makes sense. Like, of course I listened to that song and I don't know who is singing it. Oh, it's someone who plays with this other person that I really like, and so it makes sense afterwards. But what I'm trying to say is just like that I come from like this very visual approach to things in general. I'm someone very interested in visual arts, in the look of things, in general. And I started doing work, like personal work, many years ago. Of course, I was doing with what it was available, from like the mini DV cam and stuff, and trying to embrace the format qualities, so this is to say, like I love like texture, and I love like mixing formats. I love many different things. But I was doing a lot of Super 8 many years ago, and I have my Bolex, and my first film Receta is on 16 on handheld, and I always, one of the things that I have very clear at the beginning in a project is one is like the ending. What's the ending? And then everything becomes like a route to get there. The other is like the look, like for some reason it comes clear to my head first, and then I find, oh yeah, this makes sense because like I find rational or logic support to that like very first impression, or that very first intuition about how things should look. But also, so I was doing some documentaries, very guerrilla style in Mexico, back in Mexico, and then people expect you to keep doing that, and they're like, oh, so your style is like really gritty and grainy, and like, well, I wouldn't say that's my style. I like that a lot, but that's not only my style. That's not the only thing I want to do or I can do. Like as up until that point, it was like trying to use in what for me was the best way possible, the formats that I have accessible, and create a world with that. And then when I'm no longer here, was born in my head, like out of many different interests. One thing I had very clear, it was the look. Like the film comes as a response in too many things, but one of the things was, like Latin America is way more than just its troubles, or its problems. Like there's so many other things I want to tackle on the issues and social issues. But then I wanted to avoid, you know, going to common places or like reinforcing stereotypes. Also the same with social drama or immigrant narratives, you know. So I wanted to stay away from that. I wanted to make a film. Sometimes I feel like audiences are underestimated, you know, like they feel, oh no, they you need to cut very fast, and you need to be either very didactic, or one thing needs to be just one thing or the other. So in my head it's like, no, I like, this is a film about displacement and about place, and place is a character, and since I'm gonna touch upon social aspects of reality and use very different elements that themselves come from reality, I want the context to be, you know, like solid. I wanted to make this I wanted the place to be a character. That was very important for me, and show the way in which the characters are inhabiting the frame, you know. And I had like a little manifest where I said, this is no handheld. We're not gonna like cut like a lot of times, you know. We're gonna block it at the beginning. And Damian Garcia, my good friend and cinematographer, he was nervous. He's saying like, oh, working with non-professional actors. He said, I love the language, but do you think they will be able to like land on their marks? You know, like we need another set of tools for this visual language. But then after rehearsing, he saw them and he's like, wow, this is the way to go. And so it was very clear that I wanted to do something composed, you know, and have the characters move within the frame, not the camera be like moving a lot, and respect the way we look reality, finding those interesting places without going overboard. For example, in Monterrey, there were like so many interesting visual things, you know, that you just want to go crazy. But it's like, no, you know, like this is where they live. This is how they, you know, like you don't want it to become something else. So that's, you have to have this economy of like how much you show. And it's also a film in which the passage of time and like the big elliptical jumps, because of its structure, are so important that you need to see the same places in different times of the story. So we frame them the same way, you know, like that that very steep street, you know, or the political sign with the that it's almost like a clock. It's marking the passage of time, you know, like, and it's the same angle, the same, and yeah, it was considering like this is a frame for the kids, you know, for the Los Tercos.
Yeah, you answer a lot of the questions that I had, but but one of them is color, and your usage of color, and how I love the way it changes when we get to New York City, and Jackson Heights. You know, can you talk about your usage of color in the film?
Of course, you know, like we started from the places, you know, from this is how the places look. I showed Damian, and then I talked to Malena and Gabi, the costume designers, and when we designed the characters, you know, look, each one had a couple of, like Los Tercos have their color, but within Los Tercos, each one uses this kind of cloth, this kind of color, this kind, you know. So that was something we had. We had a little like yeah, like journal of like, oh yeah, Pequecillo likes to wear these kind of hats that normally are in these brighter colors and stuff. So we were very, or Ulises is going to walk against this wall. What color are we going to use? You know, and at in some other moments, for example, the market, it doesn't exist. People think it's and our department, Thaisa, the production designer, she made it from scratch, and it's super colorful. But it's colors that are real, that are there. And in some cases, you know, we had, this is the answer. We had selected colors for everything that plays in the film, but we were not intentionally like combining them together. And that's part of like the texture of like, sometimes it's somehow chaotic but alive, because all of these crazy colors are coming in together, you know. And that's maybe Monterrey. In Monterrey, we have different lenses. We couldn't be as close, you know, which means like being with him and some other Tercos. There were always more than one in frame, you know, or like him being like the king of that space, because that's where he feels good, you know. And some locations that we love, you know, had incredible colors, and when we were deciding, like some were very good and we couldn't shoot them. So in our research, we find one that was incredible and was pink, but then we couldn't shoot in that one. So then we would just take that pink and bring it to another place that we were shooting, you know, like, so everything was coming from reality, like just taking different things and then not being afraid of combining them. And the same with the light, you know, Damian was like a little bit of light and a lot of natural light, you know, and very minimal in many ways, and just using things that are already there. In Jackson Heights, when he's walking and there's like a red and green neon sign,
neon sign, yeah,
exactly, outside of like a dry clean. I saw that and I'm like, I want something there. I don't know what, but it's calling my eye. I want that, you know. And I would walk with Damian, and I have pictures that I've taken. I spend a lot of time in Jackson Heights and moving there, and we have pictures, and it just made sense. And of course, in New York, it's a different, not only in terms of colors, but in terms of the relation of the character with the space. There's less space, so we're closer. It's tighter, you know, and everything has like other texture, you know. It's more of like a more hostile environment somehow, right. Even though there's like gun violence back home. Home is home, and that's where he feels like part of something, and in New York he doesn't, no?
Yeah, I have to ask you, I have so many questions about, because I'm obsessed with your, you know, use the pretentious term mise en scène, you know, your work, the camera work, and specifically the moment where the camera is looking in the evening Monterey, and it pans up above and it lands on the cumbia dancers. That shot took my breath away. Can you talk about the you know, the journey to arrive to that shot?
It's the craziest, Roger. You are not gonna believe what I'm gonna say, but so I always wanted to do that. I don't even remember how it came to me, but like after like going to Monterrey several times and going up and from the vistas of in the hills, in the neighborhoods, I thought, this is the opening shot of the film. Actually, that scene was at the beginning, and it was the opening. It was like top view of Monterrey, like wealthy neighborhoods and downtown, and all of the lights. Then pitch black, you know, but it's a top view, you know, like, so you see, you have a big distance. Then pitch black, and then with the camera not like changing its height, or all of a sudden landing super close to this like periphery, you know, or like how people inside call it periphery, to these barrios, to this neighborhood, and it's so much present there, like it was for me an introduction of like, in this crazy world, you know, in this Monterrey, they call it el reino, no, rey, in this reino, and that's outside of it. It's almost like a story, like a tale, you know, of like in this kingdom, you know. So that was very important to me, that without changing anything, we're all of a sudden in the middle of a dance party that is, you know, like that, you know. And then we found that place, and my idea was, without cutting, because it was just part of the language, to show that, and all of a sudden, without cutting, being with our character and introduce Ulysses there. But we had a drone, and when we went there to make tests, it would just go into something called autopilot and would bring itself down and land. And the operators told us, no, it's impossible. There's some like high frequency things, you know. Okay. So we brought like the techno crane, the crane, and we were ready. That was the last day of shooting in Monterrey. I have to say that we shot in Monterrey in October 2017, and then we have to wait a whole year to shoot in New York for many different reasons. But so when the crane came, and it comes, you know, with 10 people who like put it together and all of that, and we're waiting for it to get dark, and Damian tells me something is not wrong. It's not working with the crane, you know. It's and the idea was to do that, you know. And and the same frequency of that of those antennas was interfering, and we couldn't do what we had. But then he just said, you know what, I'm going to put it at this height, and I'm going to do just the panning. And we actually ended up liking it more, you know, because it's more calm. It's and sometimes limitations inspired, you know, like the possibility of like traveling and you know, like it would have changed the rhythm of that scene, and the way it is right now, it's just like that pan, and it makes more sense with how we arrive into the party, and the you know, like the muffled sound of the speakers, you know.
That's my favorite shot in the movie, and I do have to ask you one last technical question, then we'll move on.
No.
The gang shooting, one single you know, long take, he's at a crossroads. How did you arrive at choreographing that scene?
I was so nervous because we only had 4 shots because of the expensive it is to have like the, you know, I don't know how the stopines we call in Spanish, the blood that, you know, like, and the fake gunshot,
the squibs. Yeah.
So we only had 4 take and we always knew that it was like this crossroads, you know, like, because like the motorcycle guys would have to run in one direction, you know, and he will have to hide. And I saw that location, and I liked it since the beginning. Something really sad and dark happened there, very similar to what's in the film, with some people there. And the woman of the house told us the story, and she said, of course you can come and shoot here, because here something happened with a family of mine, and of course, and it was in a different neighborhood in La Colonia Independencia, which is like, people would have like more of this prejudgment of like, oh, that it's dangerous there, you have to like go there and get out soon and stuff. I honestly never felt anything. I only felt super welcome everywhere we went. But we only had 4 shots. We had a crane. It was very much designed. Damian and I, for me, it was just one shot. Damian was the one who said like, but let's just push in super slowly. And I like, I love it. And in my head, it was a comparison of like how something can just like break and all of a sudden happen in the same way they start dancing outside the market. And it's almost the same amount of time without cutting. And in the market, it's one guy dancing and dancing and dancing, and then the other, and then the other. And the camera just lingers, you know, and we're there. The same with them. It's just like somehow like establishing a parallel between like time with those 2 scenes. And none of them, of course, were stunt actors or the kids who play the gang, or like the guys at the punto de venta, like the selling point for drugs. They trained with our stunt coordinator. They were incredible. and yeah, it was just like Damian operating the crane, and he would tell me like, oh, it's drifting, let's do another one. And it had been raining a lot in Monterrey. It never rains, but that only month that we were shooting, it was raining. It was complicated, and we got the 3rd one, which is the one that's on the film, and the 4th one, it was going great, and then a dog comes and just stands in front of the lens and looks straight into the camera, you know, like a dog. So it was funny. We could, of course, we couldn't use it, but we were happy with what we were able to achieve. It was a lot of like, I was very nervous because it was like the camera, this neighborhood is completely steep, so leveling the crane was very difficult. Then it was raining, then pushing the crane, then having these guys who have never acted before and who just practice with the stunt coordinator in the morning, you know, having that, then the guys driving the motorcycles, and it was very slippery because there was water. Then the manivelas of the crane, Damian operating. So there were so many things to control for something that it's like designed to be just one shot and very smooth, you know. So I was nervous, but I'm very happy that we could do it.
Yeah, no, it's a powerful moment in the movie. So, you know, tell us when, I mean, you started working on this project about a decade ago, right? And what was it that called you to, you know, explore the Colombias and, you know, and Los Tercos in particular?
Well, I started working in it almost a decade ago, in 2012. It were different films that just like became one at some point, you know, like different ideas, different interests. One of them was like talking about the lack of opportunities, the lack of social mobility, you know, in Mexico, and like, and how people like judge someone like maybe like a young man who decides to join a cartel. How could you join it? How could you judge if you don't know the life circumstances, you know? And Mexico is very divided, and I mean the world. But on the one hand, I have that, you know, and I have always like I've always loved like countercultural movements, you know, and their value as cultural accidents and spontaneity, and as something that inherently is responding to something in a very natural way, you know. I love that with the power of youth, you know. I loved it when I went down and understood what was behind all of this like mysticism or all of this tradition of gangs in Monterrey, and the necessity of like belonging, creating identity, reinventing themselves, you know. It was for me a resistance movement, you know. You know, there's generation upon generations of like people who have been oppressed, you know, and they don't want to conform. They don't want to, like, even they go to school, go do this, do everything by the book, and you'll go somewhere. They know that there's nowhere to go, because for them there's nothing. They don't go to school. They gather with people who they identify. They change their names. They dance to these slow down cumbias. They want to hold on to those happy moments in life. They want to live at the fullest. You know, one kid told me one day that by my age, I was 30 then, he would have already been killed, and he'd rather live one year knowing the pleasures of life and knowing he will die than a life in misery, you know. And how can we judge such a decision if we are not in their shoes? And also I wanted to stay away from like the stereotypical representation that exploits or serves other views outside the place you are trying to represent, and feeding only into like this morbid hunger of like wanting to see tragedy, wanting to see only like the misery, you know, and the shocking values of that, you know. I opposed it and I wanted to try to do something in celebration of this countercultural movement that I actually saw fading as I was rehearsing it, you know, because of what was happening with the war and drugs. So these things came together, and I just like wrote the story, and I wanted to also touch upon the immigration and aspects. I needed to displace the character so that I could get on board his like emotions, and through those emotions, like remember what he loved and present Monterrey as that. So I needed him to be here, and I'm questioning immigration in the US, you know, like not everyone is the same as, again, you know, like how can you judge someone? Not everyone is migrating for the same reasons. Not every Mexican comes from the same place. It's not everyone is like feeling the same way here. And this idea of like maybe migrating for something that's supposed to be better for you, but that doesn't really feel like that, you know, and how like being stubborn, like Los Tercos, how can be stubborn could be in a more privileged set of circumstances, virtue, but maybe like in a very difficult situation, it's a problem, you know, because you don't want to assimilate, you don't want to let go what defines you, and yeah. So I wanted to build a film that had that, and that I think also I since the beginning I was dreaming of the form, you know, of like having a film in which the emotional aspect of the film is like one step ahead, and the logical information comes after, and it's going to be there eventually, you know, like, but I didn't want to lead the spectator by the hand and telling them how to feel, what's going on. I actually wanted to be disorienting at some points, so that before you notice, you are with Ulysses and you know who he is, you know, and then you understand the circumstance, you know. again, I feel like we are so divided, and then you judge people just because of their political view, but like maybe you could have connected with that person at another level deeply, you know, and if you don't have the chance to do that, then I mean, it's really sad. And finally, I'd say that I feel that there are certain like narratives, like for example, the immigration narratives need to be, when trying to talk about different cultures or different places, it's not only like the same formula, the same structure, but just with another color. You know, let's tell the same story that we've seen, but now with this group or now with this other group. No, like we have to question the architecture, like the structural architecture of those narratives, respecting the places that we are talking, you know. And in my case, I'm not from Monterrey, but I being from Mexico City and being outside of Mexico, living in New York, made me want to talk about Mexico and look at it from a different angle. So yeah, all of those things came.
I want to grab onto something that you talked about, which the elliptical narrative, and you talked about the feeling of feeling disconnected. And when I watched the film, you know, I mentioned to you that, you know, I'm from Panama. I came to the United States as an immigrant, Jackson Heights. What I loved about your nonlinear structure is that I felt the way it felt to me. I felt that the past and the present, you know, was almost blending. You know, you're constantly carrying where you came from, and you feel at the same time alienated in the current state that you're in. Can you talk about the nonlinear aspect of the narrative?
Of course. I mean, to be entirely honest, at some point somebody told me, man, you're in a workshop, your film, it's very interesting, but people are gonna really miss Monterrey. And I'm like, yeah, that's why I want them to experience, because the character is missing Monterrey. And they were, yeah, but I mean, we've seen New York in other films, and we haven't seen this world, and you might want to be aware that maybe, you know, the attention gets lost, so because that Monterrey world is a little richer maybe, or like newer or unexpected. And I was like, come on. But that stayed in my head. Then when I was trying to when I saw how many pages I had, you know, like writing how he crossed the border and all of this logical thing, and then I started to make like a map of how I wanted people to put together the puzzle that the film is. This is supposed to be a puzzle that you don't have the cover. So you don't know what you're putting together as an image. You just have a bag of pieces, and you're putting together the pieces, and at the end you realize that there's a hole, that you don't have the whole puzzle, and it's supposed to kind of hurt or to make you ask the question, and now what? Now what's going to happen with this kid? You know, there's something missing. And so when I was thinking about that, I came up with the idea of like two-time structure, and that would allow me for these elliptical jumps. But then it all started making sense when I thought in the terms that you were talking about exactly. So memory, it's just like a consensus, you know, like it's I mean, past time, it's a consensus. I mean, not memory. Memory are emotions. We remember something because of how it impacted us, and then it stays with us, even if it, like, the information of the real facts are transformed. Like, I mean, you can go back to your school of when you were a kid, and you remember that patio being huge, you know, but then you go there and it's super tiny, but you were smaller, of course, you know. And but the impact that it had, you know, it's big. And so this idea of like the future is not necessarily ahead and the past behind. The past can be ahead, the past can be right now, like not letting you be in the moment because you are still carrying who you were, which was what you were saying, which is what you were saying. And the same, you know, like so we don't really know if the past is behind, or the past can be right here or in ahead. So it just made sense, you know, because that's what the character is going through.
Speaking of the past, cumbia, it's always, you know, my mother and my family members would always play cumbia because they said it will remind them of the past. It remind them of where they came from, the countryside, you know, when they moved to the city. When I was coming into the United States, I would listen to cumbia because it reminded me of where I came from. But then los tercos slow down the cumbia. And it's so heartbreaking to me. It's like they don't want the cumbia to stop. You know, the cumbia is a 5-minute song. It's a long song to begin with, and then you slow it down, the rebajada, and then it just becomes this forever tune. You know, can you talk about, you know, the music and the sound and the importance?
Of course, I mean that's the heart of the film, the parallel or the analogy between like the cumbia rebajadas as that sound of the Colombia kids in Monterrey, and the idea of I don't want the music to stop because I know there's no future. I know there are no opportunities. I don't want to grow up almost, you know, like I want to stay here because what am I going to do? I don't want to be like what are my options in the film? You see like what are the way outs? What are the ways out? One kid becomes a born again and it's rapping about Jesus, and the other one is dead, and the other, you know, like and if you want to like do things straight and then get a job, and like there's so many things against, you know, and so this idea of holding on and trying to expand the moment and make it last as long as it possible is, that's what it's my interpretation of the meaning of cumbia rebajada. But of course, cumbia, being Colombian, the cumbia that stayed in Monterrey, the one with accordion, with people say it's the la voz de lamento, you know, like the sound of longing or like sound of regret. And you know, Monterrey is in the border with Texas, and instead of like having that influence of all the country music and all that, which of course is a huge influence in Monterrey, but this group of people of living in these barrios, in these settlements, they connected to the cumbia music because of its lyrics, because it says always like, oh, how much I miss the coast, or when I go and meet my family, or I'm longing for the sun, and you know, like so Monterrey being the first industrial city in Latin America that needed hand labor to come from other places, you know, those people who migrated to Monterrey selected the cumbia as their sound of their voice, you know. Mm-hmm. And it evolved, like it started, you know, like just like the sonidera kind of cumbia with the block parties, but it evolved into like something that it's darker and nostalgic, and the cumbia rebajada, but very iconic and very specific, and it's not appropriation, it's a syncretism, but with full of meaning, and you know, and texture, and at the same time something so unique, you know.
Mm-hmm. I'm aware that we have 5 more minutes because you have to go to the Goya Awards. Working with Trevino and working with the rest of the cast that was non-professional, you know, can you tell us about, and also while you're at it, about just the access that you had to the, you know, the Los Tercos while you were filming?
Sure. Los Tercos, it's something that now exists, but before it didn't. You know, I found that I read many names of gangs, and I saw an article, a thesis from a student that was like, you know, like analyzing the names and gangs around Nuevo León, which is the state that Monterrey is in. And Los Tercos was, I saw it, and I stayed with me because my character I knew who he was, you know, since the beginning. So Los Tercos didn't exist, but right now they do. They are like a small family. We are like a small family. They didn't know each other, but behind each of them, there's like a great story of how the film run into them, or them run into the film. You know, how we found each other, and some had a very, very difficult, the very, very difficult time living their lives for a little bit, interrupting their lives to come and work with us. So from the production side, we needed to create some protections, like a bubble, you know, and some others were, you know, like more accessible, but everyone had a different story and different, like some have, most of them have children, or they have to help support their family, so they have to work. And will they be able to skip work to come to a second audition? That's I don't want them to get in trouble because of, like, I'm not making up my mind and I want to see them again for the fourth time to do a callback. No. So it was just a matter of going to them, to where they are, having interviews, talking. I met a lot of people who are not in the film, who are very talented, but maybe it was very difficult for them, you know, to work, or they were living something very difficult at the time, hard to find, or having to move from one place to the other constantly. Some of these tercos live very far away from each other. So at some point we did like summer camp, you know, like and it became like a family, and we rehearsed together. We finalized the script together. A lot of things and accent came from them that are in the script, like the little kid singing. That's because one day after, at the end of a rehearsal, he just sang, and I was like, "You are gonna do that in the film," and he's like, "No," and he accepted. And by the time the camera started rolling, they were professional actors to me. You know, we had already been rehearsing. We were able to visit the shoot of another film, so they got familiar with the size and the crew, and it was a process that came out very organically, I have to say.
And they all were able to hit their marks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, Fernando, what a pleasure. We have to wrap up. I could go on talking to you. I have plethora. Like I know I have many more questions, but we'll do it some other time. I know our paths will cross. You have a great future ahead of you, and good luck on all the upcoming love that is coming your way.
Thank you so much, Roger. It's been very nice meeting you and talking to you, and I appreciate all of your kind words.
Absolutely. Okay, hasta luego. Ciao.
Hasta luego. Ciao.